Hey all, so I'm starting a new series here, and you'll notice that I have not titled this The Best Tech Champions. What I'm aiming to do here, and then for the other 5 classes over the next week or so, is break down what I consider to be the most important champions that every battle group wants available for Alliance War offense. That means that if a champion is really great on defense or is really, really good for solo content, but they just don't seem as relevant for Alliance War, that I'm probably not going to mention them here. That does not mean that they are not good. Similarly, I'm only going to be addressing champions that I would expect most battle groups to have some chance of having an access to, and so I will not be including trophy champions or exclusive champions like OG Vision, who would probably be the primary one that could be relevant in this video. But again, my goal here is to offer a resource that is an insight into what goes through my mind when I sit down to plan offense. These are the champions that cross my mind first as far as, okay, we need to make sure that we have these available because we are probably going to assign most of them, or at least the top tier, because I am going to break each of these classes into 2 tiers. At the top are the ones that I think you absolutely need to have, and if somebody in your battle group doesn't have one of these ranked up, you need to get on that ASAP. And if you have one, you might want another, kind of depending on the champion, and we'll get to that. The second tier are those where if you have one available, it's probably going to be the best option for a few specific fights, but you're maybe not worried if you don't have them. What I would consider to be the archetypes of these 2 champions, to give some spoilers, in the first tier, if your battle group does not have at least one Human Torch at whatever the maximum ranked level is for your alliance, you probably want to fix that. However, on the other hand, Dr. Octopus is who I would consider the archetypal tier 2 champion on this list, because I have seen some absolutely amazing fights with him. Both Jnik and Iron Patriot, 2 of my friends who I respect tremendously, have done really great things with him in war, and for some of those fights, I'm convinced he is the best, most elegant answer. However, we do not have a rank 3 Dr. Octopus in my battle group, and it has not felt like a problem. So that's kind of the breakdown between the two. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get into this. I don't intend for most of these lists to be ranked, but for tech there is a clear first place, and that is obviously going to be Ghost. She has just been an absolute queen of Alliance War for years now. Back when rank 5 5 stars were the big deal at the high end, I was actually something of a Ghost main for a while because she was just that good. It kind of fell off when we got to the point of other people having rank 3s. Things change over time. But she has been almost eternal. She is so good that even when Kabam tried to stop her with true focus, she saw slightly less use and it basically just took a little more skill. I feel like that's kind of enough said. If you don't know how good Ghost is, then my guess is you're probably on the newer side to Alliance War, and so check out some of the channels along the lines of Legacy has some incredible Ghost gameplay, Karate Mike, the same Iron Patriot that I've mentioned before. I'm probably missing quite a few others, but there's just some absolutely incredible fights out there that show you what this champion can do. The other champion that I think absolutely nobody will be surprised by is Warlock. Warlock has just been an absolute workhorse for a while. He is considered by most people to be the best robot, and often when you need a bleed immune or a poison immune, he's one of the ones you go to. He has perhaps the best mechanic for heal block on most matchups. There are some exceptions. If he's taking on a really buff heavy matchup, then his infection isn't as great. But short of that, he just covers an incredible amount of ground. He does great damage. He has a solid moveset for navigating fights. All of his specials can be relevant. It's usually the special too, but access to armor break and heal block on a champion who is immune to both bleed and poison, you're already looking at a winner. There is one thing that we need to discuss with Warlock though, and that is willpower. Warlock looks so incredible in large part because most people place their defenses with the willpower mastery turned on. And that means that once you have infection up with Warlock, every time you inflict any debuff at all, even his stuns, if you are fighting someone who is not themselves a robot, you are not only preventing any willpower healing, you are draining their power. You may also be doing a small degen if your Warlock is awakened, but that's really not what's helping him win. And so that's why you see Warlock assigned to all of these like apocalypses and just an absolute glut of very dangerous defenders that he doesn't have an explicit answer for, but as long as they're running willpower, he just steamrolls them because they never have access to their specials, or at least don't have access to many. The problem is that more and more high-tier alliances are placing the key defenders for whom you would use Warlock without willpower. And that makes a lot of those fights much more dicey for him. While he's still a lion of Alliance War, I do think that he's dropped off a bit and is definitely behind Ghost here. Now, still in the top tier, but a clear step below those two, I would mention Guardian and Guillotine 99. Now, Guardian might surprise some people because he is not that popular, and I think a big reason is because many people assume that he is just not worth ranking unless he is basically at max sig. And that is a huge investment. My Guardian does happen to be at max sig, and it does unlock fights that he otherwise would have more trouble with. But the thing you need to understand about him is that several of his most important pieces of utility are in his base kit without the awakened ability. Most importantly, he can still parry specials for no block damage at all. I've done this against Apocalypse. He still does not crit and can still do great damage without needing to land critical hits. We assigned an unduped Guardian just the other day for a Kitty Pride on lane 5B, and he can still parry projectiles, which allows him to take on nodes like Ebony Maw. I took an Ebony Maw in one of my recent war videos with Warlock, and I don't think the dupe ever really came into play. The extra block proficiency is nice, but I finished well over 90% at the end of it, and so taking a little bit more on parries throughout the fight would not have been a big deal. I really do think that if you do not have a rank 3 Guardian, even unduped, that is a weakness that you should probably look into filling in your battle group, but I understand that this may be one of the more controversial opinions in this particular video. So moving on to Guillotine 99, I don't think this one surprises anyone. Especially while Protect was the meta tactic, she was all over the place, because if you played her well, it was pretty easy to keep her in under that damage cap, but because of her direct damage and her degen, she would still tear down really dangerous defenders regardless. She also has that built-in healing and that armor, both of which make her more sustainable, and she was probably the #1 option for Apocalypse bosses during Protect, at least that I saw assigned. Even without that, she is still very useful. We see her on Rage nodes for similar reasons. We see her against anyone where you really don't want to do a lot of damage in one hit but want to spread it out. She also does not crit like Guardian, and so we're actually sending one in the war that I just assigned today. For a Kitty Pryde on Encroaching Stun, we're sending Guillotine 99 with the War Machine pre-fights, and I expect it to go fairly well, but knock on wood there. But you just want to have access to her. She may not be the best answer for quite as many fights as some of the others on this list, but when you want her, you really want her. And so again, if you do not have a rank 3 is my benchmark for the tier that I'm in, but from that tier, if you do not have a rank 3 Guillotine 99 in your battle group, I consider that something that needs to be fixed. Now, moving into the second tier, we have quite a few. In this tier, I would put Dr. Octopus, like I said, because for any fights where there is just a ton of power gain that you might have trouble power locking right away, he just auto power locks them. And I am not an expert in Dr. Octopus, but I already mentioned Jnick and Iron Patriot. Another YouTuber called Steel from Australia made a really good Dr. Octopus guide that I will try and link in the description. And just in general, there is a lot that he can do. The way I think about Dr. Octopus is that while I'm not actively sad that we don't have one, I do actively want to dupe mine so I can rank him up and have him as an option, and I would be happy to see somebody else in my battle group rank him and put in the time to learn how to use him, because that would be one more tool that we had. Along those lines, Silver Centurion is someone where exactly that happened. My BG mate Strands decided to invest in him and learn how to use him better, and we have been assigning him almost every war this season. We have an EMP modification Havoc that I think personally that he is the single best answer for. He's also great for that Chitinous Thorns node because he is bleed immune, but he is not a robot. We've sent him to Vigor because he does a ton of damage without landing big crits or needing to stick debuffs, because once he's awakened, all of his damage over time is passive. There's a lot going on in this kit, and I think that he's a still severely underrated champion. And so if someone is asking, hey, do we need a Silver Centurion on offense? Need might be a strong word, but my instinct as an officer would be to talk to that person and say, yeah, that would be helpful. Let's take a look at it. Moving down the list, I think Ultron also fits in this tier. He's really great since his buff. Can do a ton of damage, especially against mutants. Has some ways to get around ability accuracy reduction. It's not everything he can do, but his functions bypass it. He has double regen built in, which is great. He has very easy access to an armor up, so he's good for Havocs. It helps his sustainability. When he's awakened in high sig, he can even potentially take hazard shift because he will reduce the duration of the incinerates and be immune to the poisons. We have not yet assigned Ultron to war, but I have seen other alliances assign him to great effect, and he is very good. Maybe not absolutely essential, but he is somebody that I think you want to have. Similar with War Machine. Now, I'm sure you've heard of his pre-fights. I mentioned them earlier. They can be extremely helpful, and they can make champions like Ghost and Warlock that much better. But if you think that War Machine himself is not useful in difficult war fights, then I'm going to link the channel of Bryce, or MU8s, in the description. He has done some really great things with War Machine, and you should go check those out. Because again, this isn't something where my battle group doesn't have options for it, but the fact that I have not yet assigned War Machine for something other than his pre-fights does not mean that he is not good for other things. We've been talking about Kitty Pryde a few times. He's another option for that because his special one removes prowess. And just in general, he has really solid damage, great block proficiency, and access to a really good armor break. There's definitely something there. I also want to mention Punisher 2099. Again, one that I have not assigned yet, but this is a legitimately great champion, especially if you have in your battle group a really good player with like Captain America Infinity War at Sig 200. He pairs absurdly well with that because one of the classes you want on the team most often is a tech for that Petrify. And if you have Captain America on the team, then Punisher 2099 just needs to wait for a few seconds at the beginning of a fight, and he almost completely shuts down the defender. If you are running Tech Collar or Max Petrify, it is not that difficult for him to finish fights without the defender ever gaining a bar. So he's another one that I recently ranked because we had one on defense, but I wanted to have him available for offense. Now, my Captain America Infinity War is not maxed out, so we haven't done that yet, but I do think it might be on the horizon. Very good champion you want to look for. And then one last one that I should mention is Mysterio. We talked earlier about how Warlock usually has the best heal block, but if you're dealing with somebody who has a lot of buffs on them, then Warlock is going to be quite bad for controlling their healing. Mysterio is not, because his requires a little more work on the front end, but there are no downsides to where, oh, well, he just can't do it against this person. He also can have quite good damage. He has access to some power control. He's poison immune. And on top of that, his ability accuracy cannot be reduced. I believe this is currently bugged against Disorient. I actually haven't tested it in a little bit, but it does work against Domino. And so I'm also going to link in the description my fellow officer in BG3, Campo. I'm going to link his channel because recently he took a Domino with Mysterio, and it was just as clean and elegant an answer as could be. We don't normally feel like we need him, but I'm really glad that we have two in our battle group so that one can go on defense and we can have one available for those situations in which he is the best answer. So I hope this video was interesting to you. Again, this is not intended to be a list of the best tech champions, and the fact that I have not mentioned your favorite one is not intended as a slight against any of those. Additionally, I need to fully admit my biases here. I am coming at this from the standard of my alliance and what I've heard from other top alliances that I have played against or have friends in. That does cover a large swath of Tier 1, but I'm going to miss things. And so, while I think that this is a pretty good list for an officer who is trying to figure out who they need to ask people to rank up to make war planning easier, I'm also open to discussion on this, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. As I mentioned, I do intend for this to be a series, but I'm actually headed out of town this weekend, so both the rest of them and my next couple war videos will probably be a little bit delayed. But if you want to catch them when I get back, be sure to subscribe and turn on that notification bell. And again, I hope this was interesting. I hope you like the idea of the other ones, and I will catch y'all next time. Take care.